On June 6, 1944, the invasion of Normandy took place, also known as D-Day. This was a combined effort of the Allied troops who were fighting in the largest war in history, World War II.
What happened?
Over 7,000 ships and landing craft participated in D-Day. These ships carried over 130,000 Allied troops from the US, Britain, and other Allied forces. This day was a turning point in World War II. The D-Day invasion of Normandy pushed back German and Axis power forces, changing the outcome of World War II as we know it. Less than 1 year after this major victory, Germany and its allies surrendered.
Welcome to Check This Out, podcast for kids.
And their grown-ups, where we explore people, places, ponderings, and past moments from history that shape the world around us. My name is Amy Contreras.
And I'm Cece.
Today is an extra special episode because tomorrow is the 81st anniversary of the D-Day invasion of Normandy. Check This Out is about to release our next series on past moments from history around the world. But we just couldn't wait to share the D-Day episode with you. And how fitting that we could do it on the 81st anniversary of the day.
I'm excited to learn more.
Well, we should start by laying a little groundwork so our listeners understand why D-Day was so important and how it impacted the outcome of World War II. D-Day was just one of many battles that happened over the course of the war from 1939 to 1945. So let's get some bigger context about World War II and why we still talk about this past moment from history.
Fair enough.
Check this out. World War II is the largest war in history. World War II was a battle between two main groups of countries, the Allies and the Axis. The major Allied powers were Britain, France, Russia, China, and the United States. The major Axis powers were Germany, Italy, and Japan.
I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, World War II started because Germany's leader, Adolf Hitler, wanted to take over Europe. Germany invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939, and that kicked off World War II. By 1941, Germany had invaded France, Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg, Denmark, Norway, Greece, Yugoslavia, and even the USSR.
A lot was happening.
That's only scratching the surface. Around the same time that Germany was invading countries in Europe, Japan wanted to control Asia and the Pacific Islands. The U.S. didn't get involved in World War II until Japan bombed the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii on December 8th in 1941. Because Japan and Germany were allies, when Japan decided to bomb Pearl Harbor, the U.S. declared war on Japan, which included its ally, Germany.
History can be complicated.
Yeah, there were a lot of players in World War II. It's called a world war because over 70 countries participated in the war.
That's a big number.
Well, here's an even bigger number. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, between 40 to 50 million people died during World War II. Many of them civilians or people who were not fighting. That not only makes this the largest, but deadliest conflict in history.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, look, we could do weeks of episodes just on World War II, and we'll cover other elements of World War II in future episodes. And in fact, if you want to learn more about World War II, there are tons of books and podcasts dedicated to just that. But we want you to have a basic understanding of what the conflict of World War II was, who was involved, and why it mattered, because all of that sets up what happened on D-Day, which is what we're talking about today.
That makes a lot of sense.
So here are a few last things to know about World War II. In our episode on Anne Frank, we talked about something called the Holocaust. This was a plan by the Germans, or Nazis, who were invading Europe to kill people that they thought were inferior or different. Inferior is a fancy word for less than. The Nazi Party of Germany killed over 6 million Jewish people over the course of the war, but they killed many other civilians, including gypsies, people who looked or loved differently than what they thought was right, and people who stood up to them or who tried to help the Jewish people.
That is not okay.
I agree. Early in the war, Germany was highly successful with its attacks and invasions. They were famous for their tanks, submarines, and blitzes, where they would use airplanes to drop bombs and create damage to countries they were fighting against.
What happened?
Well, the Allied forces of Britain, France, Russia, China, and the US had to work together to build a plan to push back the highly efficient and well-trained German army. Which brings us to D-Day. But just like how we had to understand a little bit about World War II to understand why D-Day matters, you probably need a little more information on who was involved in D-Day and how the invasion of Normandy happened successfully.
That would be helpful.
The planning for D-Day was led by General Dwight D. Eisenhower. And if his name sounds familiar, it's because General Eisenhower eventually went on to become one of the presidents of the United States.
Tell me everything!
General Eisenhower was in charge of a collaborative effort across the Allies to plan D-Day. D-Day, or the invasion of Normandy, was a massive logistical and strategic challenge. It required a ton of coordination between the Allies and months of planning. Plus, they had to gather a lot of intelligence to make sure that the largest amphibious invasion in history would be successful.
What does that word mean?
Amphibious invasion means a military operation where troops are landed from the sea, typically on a hostile shore, to seize and control a territory, which is exactly what D-Day was, because France was controlled and occupied by Germany when it happened.
Got it.
D-Day happened on June 6th of 1944. By this point, the U.S. had been involved in World War II for 3 years. Another leader named Lieutenant General Frederick Morgan and his team of British, American, and Canadian officers are the ones who submitted plans for the invasion all the way back in July of 1943. So it took almost a year of planning to bring D-Day together.
That's a big job.
The Allied forces ran deception campaigns to draw German attention and strength away from Normandy, so there would be less German troops to defend against the attack. Deception campaigns mean they set up false leads to distract the Germans and have their attention focused elsewhere.
How incredible. That's amazing.
Yeah, and lots of resources were needed for this attack. To build up the resources for the invasion of Normandy, British factories had to increase production, and in the first half of 1944, around 9 million tons of supplies and equipment crossed the Atlantic from North America to Britain to get ready for the invasion of Normandy.
I wish I could have seen that.
So now that you know some of the players and how much planning and coordination it took to make D-Day happen, let's get into the day itself.
I'm ready. Hit me with it.
Just after midnight on June 6th of 1944, more than 18,000 Allied troops were dropped into the invasion area. They parachuted in from airplanes in the cover of darkness to provide extra land support for the troops who would invade by water. Then came the water attack. Do you remember how many boats I said were involved in the invasion of Normandy at the start of the episode?
I got nothing.
It's okay. Around 7,000 naval vessels invaded Normandy on D-Day. These ships carried around 133,000 Allied troops who landed on the beaches of Normandy to fight the Germans. Now, listeners, do you know what country Normandy is in? Is it
A,
Poland,
B,
Greece,
C?
France?
Mama, can I guess? I pick C.
If you said C, you're right.
Check this out.
Sometimes people ask what the D in D-Day stands for. Well, here's a fun fact. The D in D-Day merely stands for day. This is a coded designation that was used for the day of any important invasion or military operation. The D technically serves as a placeholder for a specific date.
You gotta be joking.
D-Day was the largest land, sea, and air attack in history. Keep in mind, the paratroopers landed and got into position just after midnight on the morning of June 6th. Around 5:30 a.m., or sunrise, the naval bombardment started. There were several beaches in Normandy that were under attack. Troops landed across 5 assault beaches, which is where most of the fighting took place. These beaches were codenamed Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. Omaha was especially important because it connected the other beaches. Less than a week after D-Day, on June 11th, the 5 beaches were fully secured, and over 326,000 troops, more than 50,000 vehicles, and some 100,000 tons of equipment had landed on the beaches at Normandy.
Check this out.
Did you know that D-Day wasn't always supposed to happen on June 6th? It was originally set to happen on June 5th, but got delayed by a day due to poor weather.
That didn't stop them.
Yeah, it's wild how something as pesky as weather can affect what dates we talk about in history. D-Day and the ultimate invasion of Normandy opened a second front in the fight against the Nazis and the Axis powers, which meant they had to fight on multiple fronts, including the heavily defended Eastern Front. Having to fight in different places strained German resources and manpower, which helped contribute to their eventual defeat and surrender.
But that's not all.
D-Day was the start of Operation Overlord, which was the broader Allied invasion strategy for Europe. The goal was to bring World War II to a quick end. Weeks and months of fighting and pushing into France and Europe came after D-Day, but it was this battle that opened the door for the Allied powers to turn the tide of the war.
I want to check out more about that.
You should. It's hard to know exactly how many brave people lost their lives during the Normandy invasion, but over 10,000 casualties or deaths were reported on this day alone. D-Day was a bloody but important battle. It opened up France for Operation Overlord and the campaign to liberate Paris, which lasted from June to August of 1944. If you have a grandpa or grandma who served in the military during World War II, we thank them for their service and we honor the memory of the soldiers who gave their lives in battle. Thank you to all veterans and their families who may be listening in with us today. We appreciate your service. Now, at Check This Out podcast for kids, we don't just love learning about history.
We also love to rhyme.
So we wrote you a poem to help you remember D-Day and think about some of the important things that happened. As the sun rose on June 6 in 1944, brave Allied troops landed on Normandy's shore. From ships and planes, they fought with might to push the German forces back in sight. 5 beaches, the names we know, Utah, Omaha, Juneau, and more. They battled through the fiercest fight for France's freedom and what was right. This huge invasion changed World War's tide, the battle to victory with nations allied. D-Day we call it, the invasion of Normandy, a bloody battle so we could be free. The invasion was huge, the largest of its kind, a battle for freedom, the chance we could find. Many soldiers paid the ultimate price. It helped defeat the Nazis, an honored sacrifice. Thanks for listening to another episode of Check This Out. Here at the Check This Out podcast, we know there's a lot of information and it can be overwhelming to find accurate information. Think of this podcast as a tool for you to help you learn how to do something called citing your sources. As you get older and do projects for school, you'll learn that certain types of websites or information sources aren't verified or have evidence and documentation to back them up. On Check This Out, we use verified sources to build the stories you hear about. Verified sources are materials or information that have been confirmed for accuracy and credibility through an evaluation process. Our sources for this week's episode are History.com, Encyclopedia Britannica, Britannica for Kids, the Eisenhower Library, Nat Geo, dday.org, and the National World War II Museum. Tune in on June 9th for our final episode in the 7 Natural Wonders of the World in our series. We'll wrap it up with Victoria Falls. And then join us again on June 16th as we talk about Juneteenth.
Thanks for listening. See you next episode. Don't forget to subscribe.